Black cabinet members arrived in Washington, D.C., they faced enormous barriers. They weren't welcome in most of their jobs. Most of their superiors were lower-level administrators, and they really resented having Black advisors. They first off, because they were racist, resented having Black people just in their office. Washington, D.C. was a Jim Crow city, and the federal buildings were segregated. And then secondly, these advisors resented the idea that they should have to do anything to address Black needs.
Roosevelt was so self-confident, so sure of himself, that he didn't feel threatened by drawing on the talents of Jews, Catholics, Black people, any American who knew something. And that, simple-minded as that sounds, was a revolutionary thing.
If you consider presidencies now, they would have press conferences, they'd have their surrogates out there talking about these issues, talking about the policies, talking about how these policies would affect certain populations. You'd see a whole program and a whole campaign, particularly through the media, that is meant to sell to the voter that this president is working on your behalf. In many ways, Roosevelt could not do that. He didn't have the media that we have today, but also there was a concern that didn't want to upset, a lot of Southern Democrats. So what you started to see were appointments.
Most of the members within Roosevelt's Black cabinet were themselves activists before and after and during their time as federal advisors. Mary McLeod Bethune was an official with the NAACP. Robert Weaver, before he became a part of the Department of Interior, was a part of an activist organization that was documenting the deficiencies in the New Deal.
There were people like Eugene Kinkle Jones. There were other members of the Black cabinet, individuals in the federal government working in the bureaucracy, but individuals whom Roosevelt could go to talk about policy issues, such that no policy would be made toward the African American community without their say-so.
William Hastie and Robert Weaver worked together in Interior, and this problem of enforcing the fair application of New Deal projects and hiring practices, what they figured out was to write hiring quotas into PWA contracts to ensure that the number of Blacks hired on construction sites represented the percentage of African American construction workers in a community. How effective was it implemented? Probably uneven, but just that notion that that's coming out of a New Deal office.
Politics requires you to be bold. Politics requires you to take a stand. It requires your input, but it also requires the input of all stakeholders. One of the things I think the Roosevelts taught us was that not everybody will have the ability or the political capital to use it all at once to be able to force change. That in many ways, you can affect profound and lasting change if you really understand how government works and where to put people in the right places to affect that change.